Behind every shiny WNBA valuation, there's a deep red balance sheet. And Magic Johnson just said the quiet part out loud. He revealed that teams like the LA Sparks, despite being tied to valuations in the hundreds of millions, are hemorrhaging money and functioning as tax write-off for their wealthy owners. These franchises are held more for strategic or PR value than actual business success. If you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe. Johnson's blunt breakdown of who really controls the money and how it's being spun challenges the entire narrative of a booming league ready to stand on its own. That challenge couldn't come at a more pivotal moment as the league pushes expansion and new media deals. The numbers thrown around look great on paper but don't reflect operational reality. Magic's critique brings attention to the fragile foundation beneath these high-dollar claims. If future plans aren't grounded in actual revenue growth, the WNBA risks building a business model on borrowed time and borrowed money. When Magic Johnson speaks, people tend to listen. But this time, he didn't drop a motivational quote or retweet a highlight reel. He blew the lid off the WNBA's financial fantasy, publicly challenging the numbers flaunted by Forbes and echoed by mainstream outlets. Magic flat out rejected the idea that teams like the LA Sparks were worth hundreds of millions of dollars. According to him, those big dollar figures weren't just wrong. They were dangerous. Because here's what's really going on: WNBA teams aren't printing money, they're burning through it. Magic made it clear, these franchises, including his own Sparks, are losing money every year, a lot of it. In some cases, up to $50 million annually. That's not just a dip in revenue, that's a financial faceplant. And yet, these same teams are being valued at eye-watering prices. Why? Because the media loves a good growth story. Because optimism sells. Because people want to believe women's basketball is finally breaking through. But Magic's version of the truth doesn't leave much room for fairy tales. Cathy Engelbert, the WNBA commissioner, has been the face of the league's growth narrative. She's been promoting expansion, touting media deals, and emphasizing the WNBA's transformational moment. And to be fair, visibility is up. Star power is rising. The buzz is undeniable. But what Magic Johnson forced into the spotlight is the gap between the perception and the actual numbers behind the scenes. Engelbert has used valuation figures as proof of success, pointing to new teams like the Golden State Valkyries and billion-dollar projections. But Magic's takedown called out the elephant in the room. These valuations were based on present profitability. They'd collapse. They're not being priced on what the league is making today. They're being priced on what someone hopes it will make tomorrow. That distinction is huge, especially in the context of collective bargaining negotiations. When players ask for a bigger slice of the pie, the size of the pie matters. And if that pie is mostly theoretical, it changes the entire conversation. Adam Silver, the NBA commissioner, has been a long-standing supporter of the WNBA. But part of that support includes financial subsidies. The NBA props up the WNBA in ways that rarely make headlines. When Magic Johnson pointed to the ongoing losses these teams endure, he was also pointing toward a financial system that only works because the NBA is footing part of the bill. Silver has emphasized growth potential and long-term investment, but it's the NBA's deep pockets that keep the WNBA afloat. Without that, the current model would collapse under its own weight. It's not just about player salaries or travel logistics, it's about the fundamental business model. This makes the inflated valuations even more questionable. They don't reflect standalone success. They reflect strategic positioning, ownership optimism, and long-term bets that may or may not pay off. And when Magic pulled back the curtain, the reality was far less glamorous than the headlines suggested. One of the loudest valuation benchmarks came from the WNBA's shiny new expansion, the Golden State Valkyries. Their arrival sent a message that the league was entering a new era. Big market NBA partnership, deep-pocketed owners, all the right buzzwords. But Magic's reality check made it clear: expansion team valuations don't reflect the reality of older franchises. A new team coming in with clean books and no baggage isn't the same as a team that's been losing money for decades. Comparing the two creates misleading benchmarks. The Valkyries may have justified A high valuation because of market potential, media hype, and NBA backing. But none of that erases the fact that operational profits don't exist yet. The optimism driving those numbers is based on scarcity, not sustainability. There are only 12 teams in the league. Add a new one, and you instantly create perceived value. But perceived value is not actual revenue, and that's the part getting conveniently left out of the narrative. Caitlin Clark hasn't publicly commented on valuations or ownership structures, but her impact is baked into the hype. Her arrival in the league has sent attendance numbers surging and media coverage into overdrive. She's a headline machine, and she's drawn more eyeballs to the WNBA than any rookie in years. But her presence also fuels an illusion. It's easy to think the league is booming because people are finally paying attention. And to some extent, that's true. But Magic Johnson's point cuts deeper. Attention doesn't equal profit. Clark might be selling out arenas and spiking TV ratings. But none of that guarantees operational profitability. When the media links rising stars like Clark to soaring valuations, they're connecting dots that don't automatically lead to money in the bank. Magic's frustration seems to stem from the fact that all this hype is being translated into financial assumptions that don't reflect actual business performance. Magic didn't just critique the numbers, he corrected the narrative. He made it clear that the Sparks' ownership structure wasn't what people thought, and that matters. Because when you're trying to understand who controls the financial decisions, you need to know who's actually in charge. He pointed out that it wasn't just him at the top. The real power sits with Mark Walter. And the distinction isn't just semantics, it's governance. Who holds the purse strings? Who's making the strategic calls? That clarity is critical, especially in a league where ownership is often portrayed as symbolic or simplified. Magic's insistence on correcting this detail shows how media narratives can shape public perception in ways that don't align with reality. And when those same narratives are used during player negotiations or CBA battles, it can skew expectations on both sides. For Engelbert, that ownership distinction probably wasn't on her media tour checklist, but it should have been. Because the gap between the league's growth pitch and the hard numbers is widening. And the people who are going to feel that strain first are the players. As the WNBA pushes into new cities and media platforms, it's balancing two stories: the dream of what it could become and the reality of what it currently is. Magic Johnson threw a wrench into that balance, and it's now up to league leadership to reconcile that with transparency. Valuations continue to climb. While losses continue to mount, the league will be walking a financial tightrope. Engelbert has framed the league's current moment as a breakthrough, but breakthroughs without profits aren't sustainable, especially not in professional sports. Adam Silver has been relatively quiet about the specifics of WNBA valuations, but as the NBA's support becomes more essential to daily operations, the pressure is mounting. The valuations being promoted aren't standalone WNBA numbers. They're numbers baked into the NBA's infrastructure. Silver has backed Engelbert's leadership and praised the league's growth. But he's also in charge of keeping the lights on. That makes him more than a cheerleader, he's a financial partner. And if these valuations spiral into unrealistic expectations, it's his office that will have to balance the books. When Magic Johnson flagged this, it wasn't just a jab at media puff pieces. It was a direct spotlight on the systemic dependencies that keep the WNBA operational. And those dependencies raise a critical question. Can a league survive without them? Expansion teams like the Valkyries are being treated as proof of viability. But Magic's comments expose that expansion is more about strategic investment than actual returns. The WNBA isn't expanding because the league is profitable, it's expanding because demand for teams outpaces supply. That creates a false sense of success. New team sells out its season tickets, the media calls it a win, and the valuation ticks upward. But unless those wins translate into sustainable revenue, it's just optics. Investors might be playing the long game, but the league still has to survive in the short term. The Valkyries may be the newest jewel in the WNBA's crown, but if they're not profitable, and if they join a league where most teams are operating at a loss, they're stepping into a high-risk system, and high valuations only increase that risk if they're based on hype, not cash flow. Caitlin Clark will keep selling jerseys, she'll keep drawing crowds, and she'll keep being the face of this WNBA era. But if the league's finances don't match the momentum, it won't be enough. Because star power, as valuable as it is, can't replace sustainability. Magic Johnson's comments weren't anti-growth. They were anti-delusion. He's not against big valuations, he's against big valuations with no receipts the media might love. The Cinderella story, but Magic wants to see the bank statements in the end. The WNBA's future won't be decided by media hype or Twitter takes, it'll be decided by whether this league can operate as a business that doesn't rely on outside life support, and until that happens, every glowing valuation will come with a when Magic Johnson says the WNBA is losing tens of millions of dollars a year. He's not speculating, he's speaking from inside the room. These aren't just red numbers on paper, they're the real cost of keeping franchises like the Sparks running. And he's not pretending it's a surprise, he knew what he signed up for. But the frustration sets in when those losses are dressed up as profits. He didn't just call out media outlets, he called out the entire valuation culture that treats financial losses as strategic wins. It's the kind of doublethink that says a business burning $50 million annually is somehow worth $200 million on paper. If that sounds backwards to you, it's because it is. Magic's not against optimism, he just wants honesty. Because when you start treating hope like a revenue stream, you end up building castles on sand. The valuations, the coverage, the CBA demands, they're all connected to this one illusion that the league is making more than it is. For Kathy Engelbert, navigating this storm means walking a fine line between inspiration and disclosure. She has to market the league to new investors while keeping current stakeholders grounded in reality. But when Magic dropped the truth bomb, that balancing act got a whole lot harder. The league can't afford to look unstable, but it also can't afford to let fantasy take over fact. And right now, the numbers don't lie. These franchises aren't breaking even. Engelbert's job is to protect the long-term vision without misleading players, fans, or the media. That's not just a PR problem, that's an integrity problem. Because if players believe they're part of a booming league, they'll fight for contracts that reflect that if they later find out the business model is built on losses and tax strategies. It's not just disappointing, it's demoralizing. And once trust is broken in labor negotiations, it's almost impossible to rebuild. Adam Silver might not have Magic Johnson's media presence, but he's just as invested in how the WNBA is portrayed. The NBA has spent years nurturing the league, financially and reputationally. But even Silver knows there's a ceiling to how long you can prop something up without real returns. When the WNBA's valuations are tied to the NBA's backing, it exposes a major vulnerability. If the NBA ever has to pull back that support, whether due to market shifts, internal priorities, or economic strain, the WNBA could find itself without a financial parachute. That's why the current narrative is so risky. Silver may be proud of the progress, but he's also acutely aware of the numbers. And those numbers say one thing, loud and clear: this isn't a self-sustaining league yet, and inflated valuations might be getting in the way of building. 1. Take a look at the Golden State Valkyries again. Their launch was supposed to signal a new era, a billion-dollar market, a modern arena, a bold new identity. But if Magic's statements hold weight, then the Valkyries are also stepping into an economic model where winning off the court is about optics, not income. The Valkyries haven't played a game, but they've already become a symbol of the disconnect between valuation and viability. Magic's message hits even harder here, because when a brand new franchise is priced higher than what established franchises generate, it's not a celebration, it's a red flag. Yes, scarcity drives value, but scarcity alone doesn't pay salaries or fund operations. If the new teams are valued purely because they exist, that's not strategy, it's speculation. And when speculation inflates expectations, it often sets the stage for disappointment. Caitlin Clark, meanwhile, keeps being used as a proof point. But even she can't